Richard, this is Ashwin here, and I'm from Telangana IT Association and Digiton. So thanks for joining this meet, and I really appreciate your time from your busy schedule, and it's a really wonderful opportunity to have you on board. And there are like a vast number of students currently joined this meeting who are across, like I can say, 20 plus colleges and universities who are watching this video. And they would be really happy to have your suggestions and also your guidance on the J1 visa program. Thank you, Richard.
All right, well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to speak to you guys today. If you give me 1 second, I'll bring up the presentation.
Sure.
And then we'll get started. Thank you very much for inviting me. So I am a visa officer here at Consulate General Hyderabad, which means most of my days I'm adjudicating non-immigrant visas. And so I'll be giving you a presentation about our exchange visitor visa, which is the J1, and then we'll open it up to questions at the end. So give me just 1 second while I get the presentation up. All right, can you all see the slideshow? Okay.
Yeah, now we can see.
Yeah, now we can see.
Okay, perfect. So really quick, just about the consular section in the embassy. So our goal is to facilitate legitimate travel to the United States. We want the most safety for all travelers. We also want to provide good customer service for you guys. We see a lot of people each day. We want to keep things moving and be respectful of your time, of course. But we also want to look out for your health and safety as you're here. So those are all goals. Can everyone please mute your mics? So really quick, there are three different kinds of academic student visas. You have the F visa, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. That's for academic students. Generally people that are going for a degree course. Often from here we see people going for master's degrees or above. You have the M visa, which is more for vocational training. Oftentimes there are pilots or people getting specific vocational licensing. And then you have the visa that you're all interested in today, the J visa, which is an exchange visitor. It's a very, very broad topic and covers a lot of different things under one kind of umbrella. So here is the general visa process for someone that's interested. So the first thing you would do is create a profile on ustraveldocs.com/IN. You'd want to complete your application there, and that'll give you a barcode confirmation sheet. You'll then need to pay your fees, which we have multiple different ways that you can do it. And then you'll have the opportunity to schedule your appointments. So appointments are kind of a two-step process. The first will be the biometric appointment, where they will take your fingerprints and such, and that'll happen at a visa application center. And then the second appointment will be at the consulate itself, which is where you will come talk to a consular officer like myself. So here are a couple of tips that we have for people. So you want to arrive before your interview, but you don't necessarily need to come way out ahead of time. So the people are allowed into the consulate in batches. So if you come hours beforehand, you'll just have to wait until your time. You will go through a security screening. You will go through fingerprint verification, and then you will have your actual interview with the consular officer. Those last two might be combined together. The consular officer at the window might be doing your fingerprint verification. So this is what you'll expect on the day of your visa interview. So back to the security steps. So there are some things that we do not allow on the consulate grounds, and they're listed here. So just be aware you will not be able to have your cell phone with you. You'll need to store it somewhere. We also don't allow you to bring in food and beverages, sealed envelopes, backpacks, briefcases, basically large bags. You will be allowed to have a small bag with your application materials and open envelopes. So please think about what you're going to bring or what you will need. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. And leave everything else at home. So what to bring to your interview. So both for J1s, who are the principal applicants, and J2 dependents will need a valid passport, and they will need a valid signed DS 2019. Now, this is a government form that we'll get into a little more details on in a second. So if you have dependents, please bring proof of the relationship. So if it's a spouse, we're probably going to want to see the marriage certificate. If it's children, we'll probably want to see the birth certificate. And we often look at the wedding photos as well as the marriage certificate when looking at a spousal applicant. So what you're seeing here is a sample of a DS 2019. It's a government form that lists all sorts of information about who you'll be doing the exchange with, who the program is through. It has codes on what type of work you'll be doing and stuff like that. And it also has financial information. So this is a very important form. You need to make sure you bring it, and the consular officer will ask for it because they actually need to sign it at the bottom for it to be fully valid. And you will need this form to get into the US. So in addition to the subject field code and all that, yeah, you'll have all of information. It'll probably be signed by whoever's running your program and everything like that. So the officer at the window will need to make a determination in the box in the lower part of it as to whether or not you're subject to the 2-year rule, which is also known as 212E. We'll go over that a little bit later, but it's something you should also know about. So what to expect at the interview? It'll probably last less than 3 minutes. It happens fairly quickly. The officer might not look at your documents. Basically just be prepared to show them whatever they ask for. And they will be asking you personal questions, particularly when you're looking at spousal relationships, like we will be asking you about your marriage, how you guys met, stuff like that. So just be prepared for that. We'll also probably be asking you about your work experience, particularly for a highly skilled J1. We'll be just sort of wanting to know what you're going to be doing, like what you're going to be working on in the US. So now let's talk about the qualifications for a J visa. So to be qualified for a J, you must be credible. You must have a residence abroad. So you must have ties to another country that you do not intend to abandon, basically. You do have to speak English. Obviously, there are varying levels of that. But you will need to be able to function in the US because, of course, everyone there will be speaking English. You must have sufficient funds to meet your financial needs in the US. Now, most programs will be providing you some sort of stipend or something along those lines. It'll be listed on that DS 2019. If that does not appear sufficient to support you, you be prepared to talk about your finances, your savings, stuff like that. Basically, we want to know that you're not going to be living in poverty or forced to do work outside your program while you're in the US. You must have a valid SEVIS record. We will be checking for that before we can interview you, so make sure that you go through that whole process and pay the requisite fee there. You must intend to depart the US upon completion of your program. So some people do get multiple J1s, and that's perfectly fine. But this is not an immigrant visa. This is a non-immigrant visa. So the idea is that eventually you would be leaving the US. And then, as I said, you must have a valid signed DS 2019 form for every family member, and all of them will need to be signed by the consular officer. Okay. And then down at the bottom here, we have comply with INA 212E, which I mentioned earlier, and we'll get into a little more details in the next slide. So, US law stipulates that for certain visas, it mostly hits the J's. You must remain outside the US for 2 years before you can apply for another visa. So after you get your J1 visa, if you're subject to INA section 212E, you will not be eligible for an H visa, an L visa, or a K visa for 2 years after. Okay? And you're also not eligible for immigrant visas for 2 years after. So this applies broadly if you receive government funding for your program, either US government or Indian government. If you participate in medical training from the Educational Council on Foreign Medical Graduates, or if you possess a skill that is deemed in short supply in your home country. So this usually applies to medical professionals, engineers, people that have specific training. They're going to get some more through the exchange program, and then we'll come back. So, and this is determined by the subject field code, which is on your DS 2019. So We do have a link here that will link you to the exchange visitor skill list, and you can look up what the skill list is for India, and it'll go into more detail about which occupations, which skill codes are subject to this. From what I've seen, it's most of the highly skilled workers that are going over. Generally, the only people we see that aren't subject to this are people going for like culinary training at a hotel or something along those lines. But if you're a doctor or an engineer, I would expect that you would be subject to this. Okay, so let's talk about your rights in the United States. So yeah, you will be a temporary visitor. You'll be working in the United States. You will have all the protections of a worker in the United States. We give everybody at the window a pamphlet that talks about what your rights are in the United States, because we understand that those do vary from country to country. But it's important to know what your rights are and to make sure that you are not taken advantage of once you get to the US. And you will not be denied a visa or punished by the US government just for exercising your rights. That never comes up in terms of visa interviews or anything along those lines. So do not be afraid if you know something's wrong to report it. So now a few warnings, because we just want to make sure everyone knows this. So do not bring fake documents here. That can be punishable. Like basically, if you lie to an immigration officer, that can result in a permanent ineligibility for a visa to the US. You do not want to mess with this. It is not a happy place to be, so just please don't do it. And it can really have serious implications for the future. So now what happens after the interview? So if you're approved, the officer at the window will retain your passport. You can travel within 30 days of the start date that's listed on your DS 2019, so the start date of your program. And when your passport is ready for pickup, we will contact you. There are also options for having your passport dropped off that you can choose when you're signing up for your appointment. So if you are refused, the officer at the window will give you a letter that talks about how we make our decisions at the window, so that you'll have something to kind of look at and understand. So you are free to apply at any time. We suggest that you make sure that you meet the qualifications though, because if you don't meet the qualifications, we cannot approve your visa. So just please make sure that you're ticking all the boxes and that you are in fact qualified for the visa class you apply for. So the other option, and this happens occasionally, is that your application needs some more processing. So we put it in what we call administrative processing. It can mean any number of things, but the gist of it is that we will need to do some more work. We may need more information from you. We may just need to do stuff on our own. In this case, you will get a sheet that explains whether we need anything from you. It says that your application is in administrative processing. And so you should know what you need to do. In some cases, it may just be you'll need to wait. In some cases, you'll need to provide us with something. The important thing, if we ask for anything, get it to us as quickly as possible, because we cannot process your visa without it. If we did not ask for anything from you, it may just be that we need to do stuff on our end, in which case, try to be patient. It doesn't hurt to check in with us every once in a while. And you can also check on the website we have here to check the status of your application. Sometimes things just take a while though, so please understand we are working on it as hard as we can, and we want to get your visa out the door as quickly as we can. So most of them are resolved within 60 days, but just please plan some time just in case. All right. And then that brings us to the end of the presentation. Here are some links that we have. So US Travel Docs is where you apply. The US Embassy link gives a lot of information on general operations here. And of course, the support email address and the call center numbers are there as well. So thank you very much. I believe at this point we can move on to Q&A.
Thanks a lot, Richard. Now, I would request any students, participants who are having any queries regarding the J1 visa process or the details that Richard has given.
Yeah. And if no one has any questions, that's certainly no problem. Here to help if anyone has anything.
Hi, Richard. This is hello. Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Can you go back 3-4 slides back, please? Where you have mentioned that we have to have a residence abroad. So I just want to know what exactly. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So it is a requirement for the visa. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have like a house that you own or anything like that. Really what we're looking for is that you have ties to India that you do not intend to abandon, at least in the short term. It's a general requirement for these kinds of visas because, as I said, they're not immigrant visas. We're looking for people that are going to come to the US, do a program, and then depart at the end. So it can come to many different things. The officer, might ask you some questions about how long you've lived, if you're married, that kind of stuff.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And also few of the students, they are sending a message to me. They wanted to know what's the difference between the F1 and the J1? What's the major difference that the both the visas have in them?
Sure. So I imagine from the outside they look very similar, but on our end they're actually very different. So an F1 is sort of your standard student visa. That's someone that wants to go get a bachelor's degree or master's degree or PhD in the US. They're going to be going to an accredited university, and they're going to do their degree program. They'll have options for CPT and OPT and STEM OPT and all of those programs. The J1 visa, we're kind of talking about it in a very narrow sense, but it's actually a very broad visa. So J1s covers everything from like au pairs, people going for a couple of years to the US to take care of people's kids, to people that will be working in hotels and things like that at resorts to learn how to run a hotel. To people that have medical degrees that are going for the residencies. So it's a very, very broad topic. From the academic standpoint, the main difference is when you're on a J1, you do not have opportunities for CPT and OPT because you're brought over to do an exchange, to do a job through that. And then of course, procedurally, they're very different. For a J1 visa, you're going to have a program sponsor who you will work through and will get you all the information and everything. And partly that's because it's such a broad category. With an F1, you're generally just going between you and the school. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. That should have answered the doubts of many students right now. So yeah, and one another query, now at this current meeting, and also the vast number of viewers that are having access to this meet, they want to know if most of them, I can say, are also employed, say with around 3 to 5 years of experience, and they want to know do they have an option for internship? So what is the procedure they need to follow if they're already employed here?
So if you're already employed, there's really no difference. If you were to do an internship through the J1 exchange visitor visa program, obviously you would be leaving your job here in India for a certain amount of time. But really, I would say at the window, what we're looking for is during your interview, what makes sense. Like if you're doing an interesting job over here and you want to go, work in a hotel in the US, we're going to probably have some questions about that. And just, it may be a perfectly legitimate thing, but we're probably going to ask, because for us, it's like, well, you had a great job. Why did you decide you wanted to change careers and stuff like that? But there's certainly no statutory limitation on being employed here and working for a little while. We see a number of people that work for a few years and then decide they want to, learn something new or learn, change fields or whatever, what have you. So that it's in and of itself is not in any way negative.
And also, like a few questions from students who are currently pursuing their bachelor's degree in Hyderabad or India. They want to know, like, if they can like opt for the final project, like they do have a final semester project, and can they opt for this in a university abroad?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. You're asking if they can, when you say offer their final project to a university abroad, are you saying to present it somewhere, or
Or yeah, like so basically, like we do have the bachelor's degree program, they do need to do a project in the final semester, and a few students want to know if this project can be associated with the internship program abroad, like this before getting the bachelor's degree, if they can go out. Sorry, I guess I'm not clear to you, Richard.
No, sorry, no, I was just looking something up. So the J1 visa being so broad, there are no specific requirements that you have a bachelor's degree to do it. It very much varies from program to program what you're allowed to do. So if there's a program that would allow for this, then yeah, certainly.
And anyone do have any questions for Richard, please do let him know.
So I see one in the chat, and I'll just read it out for everyone. So, Mr. Kumar would like to know the age limit for a J1 visa and limitations like married people can apply and such like that. So there is no age limit for J1s. As I said, it's such a broad thing that there are no specific things like that. In terms of married people, there is a specific dependent visa for J1. So if the principal applicant's a J1, then all of your dependents can be J2s, and they will be allowed to go to the US. Now, the main thing we'll be looking at on that is the financial aspect of it. So in order to be eligible for a J2 visa, you have to prove that you are in fact related to the J1, and then that there is sufficient funds to support you in the US. So there might be some more questions about finances for a J2 application, but certainly we have plenty of people that are married. One of them goes off on the J1 and the other one comes on the J2. And that works for children as well.
Okay.
And it looks like we have another one from Mr. Kumar. So they asked about the maximum duration of the visa and supposes that it cannot be extended. So, so as far as I know, again, the J1 is, it really depends on the program kind of thing. Generally, the validity is 2 years, sometimes less, depending on what type of program you're doing. My understanding is that you have to come back and get a new J1. Like, it's not like the H1B where you can do an AOS, an adjustment of status, while you're in the US. You have to come back and be reevaluated. That said, we see people all the time that if they're coming back for their second or third J1 visa. So it's generally not an issue getting more than one. And I see a question from a Dharminder wanting to know if the J1 is applicable to non-IT professionals. Certainly it is. it is very much applicable to people from all walks of life. I think a lot of the ones we see here are people in the medical field because they're going over on an exchange program for their residency in the US. So it certainly is. I would say we probably actually see fewer people from the IT sector just because most of those people go the H-1B route instead. And it looks like we have a question from Ranjini wanting to know how internships work. So every program's different. Unfortunately, I can't really give you a good answer to this. You'll need to get in touch with a program sponsor and ask them how theirs individually works. Generally, working through them, you'll get placed in a workplace, and then you will work and hopefully learn new skills and kind of how that individual business runs. But yeah, it's each program is different, so I can't really give you anything more specific than that on it.
Richard, and one more question, like what are the challenges, like the basic challenges that students face at the time of application itself, like in terms of the documentations that they miss out, or any like basic things that that can be overlooked by them, by the students while applying for J1?
So in addition to the application fee, just make sure you're paying your SEVIS fee, which is usually $220 or so, but it does change from time to time. So the main thing, I would say the main challenge here is making sure that you're organized and on top of things. And I know it can get confusing, making sure you have the right documentation. As we said, for J1s, you'll need a valid passport, you'll need that DS 2019. You'll need to have made sure that you have paid both of those fees. You will not be able to do your interview until you've paid our fee, but sometimes we do see people that have forgotten to pay their SEVIS fee, in which case we cannot do the adjudication. We'll have to call you back at a later date once you've paid that fee. So just make sure you get that right. Other than that, it's just finding an exchange program that fits you. Which unfortunately I can't provide too much advice on because it's such a broad topic, but finding something that you think will give you the skills that you want.
Richard, like I guess someone already asked this, like is there a scope for extension of this J1 visa once the student or the applicant is already in US? Say suppose the visa was approved for 1 year and they want to extend it for another 1 year or 6 months. Is there a possibility for the student or the applicant, if he's already in US, to extend it, or do they need to come back to India for the stamping and the renewal process?
So to answer that, what you'll need to do is talk to USCIS, who handles people on visas like non-immigrants once they're in the US. They would be the group to answer that. Unfortunately, we do stuff from the international side. They handle stuff that's domestically. My understanding is that it can be extended though.
I do have a question from the remainder. Like he would like to know what kind of part-time jobs the applicant is allowed to do while on J1.
Yeah, so the J1 visa, as part of your internship or your program, you will have a job and you should receive some sort of compensation through that. In terms of working outside of that, so you can, 1 second. Yeah, so you'll need to talk to whoever's running your program on if it's available as part of your program to work outside of that. Sometimes it is allowed that you can work a part-time job outside of your internship, but that would be dependent upon the specific program that you're doing.
So another question is like, is it valid for MBA grads and teaching staff that are currently employed in Hyderabad or India? Do they have an opportunity as a teaching, like part-time teaching professionals on the J1 for internship program?
Certainly. I mean, it's open to everyone. You just have to find a program that works for you, fits with your background and what you're hoping to learn. We do see a number of people going over on these to be like assistant professors and things in certain topics. So certainly someone with an MBA background or relevant experience in the business environment could do that kind of thing.
So, friends, like, do you have any more questions for Richard? Thanks a lot, Richard. Like, you have been really patient with all the questions that our students and participants are having on this. And just one final call, like any students or participants, like they want to know what are the opportunities, other opportunities, or any other questions specific to visa process and application.
One in the chat asking about the years of validity for a J1 visa, and specifically sort of comparing that to the F1. And I just want to say, so for the J1, it'll be dependent upon your program. It's often a couple years, but it can be shorter. It really depends on the exchange program that you're doing. J1s do not have a system like the F1 visa where you can add on extra years to do optional training. Like the J1 itself is kind of its own training program, so it doesn't have those OPT, CPT add-on years. But yeah, it's, this is kind of one of the things about J1 visas is that it really depends on what the program is that you're doing within that kind of umbrella of the J1 in terms of how long your visa will be for. All right, last call for any questions.
Yeah, Richard, thank you. Like, I'm just checking for a final question from anyone. Just give me a moment, please. Like, I'll also, like, I'm on chat with many students, like from those who are like seeing this session in YouTube and other social media accounts as well. So just give me a moment. So I'll have a final call for the questions again.
Yeah, hello. Hi, this is Srinivas. Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Srinivas. I have one doubt regarding visa. So currently I'm doing job. I'm employer. So I would like to apply J1 visa. Can I? Hello.
Hi. So I'm not sure if your question was cut off, but what I got was that you have a job, but you're interested in applying to a J1 visa. So I can't really talk about your specific case, but having a job is not a disqualification for it, but you'd have to find a program that works for you.
I guess that's it, Richard. Like that was the final question. So yeah, and thanks a lot. Sorry, I have one final question. What would be the like financial issues for J1 applicant?
So a question about finances. I mean, the basic question we're trying to get down to is whether you have the finances to live in the US for the period of your program without resorting to working under the table or something like that. So that's really what we're looking for. Most of the time, you're going to be paid by your program, and that will be very apparent on the DS 2019. So we might ask you some questions about that, like, hey, do you think this is enough to live on, in this place that you're going to? Cost of living can vary wildly within the US, so we'll probably be asking kind of about that, tailored to where you live. And then, of course, if you are planning on bringing dependents, we might have some more questions just to make sure that that you have sufficient funds to support them while in the US.
And one small, of the record, you can say, what are the red flags that the applicant needs to avoid?
I wouldn't say there are any red flags. What the adjudicators are looking for is a person that can speak to them about why they want to do this program, what their interest is, what their goals are beyond it. Just be a real person. And that's what the interview is for, is to kind of learn about you and what you want to do. So.
That's clear. Thanks, Richard. I would have Sundeep Makthala just to provide a brief message. Sundeep, are you there?
Thank you so much, Ashwin, and thanks a lot, Richard, and all the US Consulate team for your wonderful support. And it was really informative session from your end. And thanks, Richard, for joining us. And also IACC team, Ram Kumar Makthala garu, and then Srikanth Badiga garu and Shika. So I appreciate all your help to facilitate this wonderful session. And in fact, many of the students across Telangana and Andhra Pradesh state, in Telugu state, they are watching this session live and few channels, and few students they joined, they gathered in an auditorium, and many congratulations. I welcome once again to the new program which was initiated by Telangana Information Technology Association, Digiton, and the University of Texas at Dallas and IACC. Once again, thanks, Richard. Thanks a lot for all the informative session. Thank you.